All right, we got almost everybody in, so people are getting in. I think that those that have been waiting in the waiting room are being, some of them are still being waited to click join. Great, so now we have almost everyone. Hi, everybody. Great to see so many bright longevity scientists online. And today I'm joined by Dr. Evelyne Bischof, who is kind of the co-founder and the main leader of the series and the course, and Dominika Vilchuk, who is helping put the course together. And our keynote speaker for the day is Lars Hartenstein, the co-founder of the McKinsey Health Institute and a global leader on healthy longevity. So he has training in medicine, economics, public policy at different institutions, Harvard, London School of Economics. He advised governments, multiple large corporate organizations in more than 40 countries. And today he is going to present the findings from the McKinsey's Healthspan report, which explores how advances in science, policy, and innovation could help people everywhere, not just to live longer, but also healthier and more productive lives. Before we start, let's just talk a little bit more about Dr. Hartenstein, Dr. Lars Hartenstein, and about his bio. So again, he co-founded the McKinsey Health Institute, which is a nonprofit, global nonprofit advancing global health span. He is the lead author of the 2025 Healthspan report, which was first presented at the ARDD in Copenhagen. He has the PhD in medicine from Witten University in Germany. He has a master's in public administration from Harvard. And he works for McKinsey for many, many years, advising more than 40 countries on health span system strategy and longevity policy. He is also a specialist in metabolic health. So GLP-1 therapies, obesity, prevention science, and he is the expert in urban health, so city-level interventions to expand healthy lifespan. So unless I forgot something, maybe Dr. Evelyne Bischof can tell us a little bit more. We had a wonderful presentation by Dr. Lars at the ARDD this year, ARDD 2025, which was our largest and the most prominent conference to date, with more than 1,000 people joining. And we got over 190 speakers, and one of the keynotes was Dr. Lars. And it was the first time that the McKinsey Health Institute was the knowledge partner of the ARDD series. That was our 12th ARDD. So Dr. Eva, maybe you would like to add something.
Yes, thank you so much. I think it was a very extensive introduction, but there's so much more to say about Dr. Hartenstein. I think what's so wonderful is that he is a very, very active social and governance advisor to over 40 plus governments. And one of the great outputs of McKinsey Health Institute this year was the report on healthy longevity. And this is also the topic, so the most relevant points of this very extensive and extremely recommendable to read report is being presented here with us. So we are very excited and very grateful. Dr. Hartenstein is also very much involved in public health and public education in terms of healthy longevity and healthcare systems and improvements that need to be done and the guidance. And it's all about networking, really on a global level. So we, with our Longevity Education Hub, are really on the same mission. We are trying to educate physicians, healthcare professionals, but really also everybody Those are courses that we are offering for free, certified, and I think this flows together very much in this very larger missions. This said, we are extremely grateful, very honored and humbled by this great opportunity to host a speaker from McKinsey Health Institute, and very much looking forward to the insights. Please, everybody, share your questions in the Q&A or on the chat, and we can go over them at the end with our speaker. Lars, Dr. Hartenstein, would you like to take over the floor?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me well? Perfect, excellent. So let me then maybe share something. I know that we only have till half past, so I'm going to try to. First of all, thank you for the rich introduction. I'll work hard to live up to it. Let's take it from here. So I'm going to talk about how Healthspan science can enable healthier lives for all, and the 7 necessary shifts to advance the field. And I'd like, please, if you want to, there's a publication kind of documenting all of this in more detail, so you don't need to take screenshots or anything, you know. If you want to read up to it, you can just listen to what I'm saying, and we can focus on the question at the end, and I'll try to get as much time for that by talking fast. So let's go, let me kind of try to, so basically some things that you already all know. We have increased lifespan a lot in the last years, but not health span. So in some ways, we are paying for every year of additional life historically with a year in less than great health. That's a terrible price to pay, and we need to do something about that. And that's also what the promise of the field of healthy longevity is. So we know that the need to do something is huge. 15% of the global population will be 65 or older by 2040. And we know there is also a huge latent demand. We surveyed respondents, folks around the world, and people are willing to, 60% of the population or more are very or extremely interested in products that help them with their healthy aging and their longevity. So the moment there are products, everybody is very interested in this. So let me just, before I go to one quick cautionary trail on longevity. I'm going to say this while I'm going into a very positive and optimistic story overall, but the word longevity has a history all the way going back to Gilgamesh, who basically thought he has found the youth restoring plant and then lost it on his way home, and to Isaac Newton, who basically thought that what he's doing on longevity or in alchemy that is linked to immortality is more important than what he was doing in the Principia Mathematica. I also like the Chinese emperor who gave the magician Xu Fu an army, ships, and apparently 3,000 virgins for magic elixir that would grant eternal life, but then that person vanished forever. Yeah. So it took really until the 20th century that really biomedical science changed things around longevity and also public hygiene with water treatment, discovery of penicillin and vaccine. What we're doing, what has happened really in the contemporary biomedical industry has really extended lifespan on a population level, on the population level. At the same time, we still have Linus Pauling, 2-time Nobel laureate, who thought he solved the problem to then discover that it was not really found in evidence. Why am I saying all this? It's because the word longevity biases the thinking. We would like all it to be true, and we need to be careful that we are not even a double Nobel laureate, you know, make claims that are not always claimed on evidence, based on evidence. So that's very important, and that's, I think, also great in this webinar. That this is part of the community that wants to do the right thing here. I'm not going to go into any detail here, but just to give you a sense, for instance, 2013, when the first paper on the hallmarks of aging came out, where there were approximately less than 200 articles published on the field in general, we are now at 1,300. So it's a huge increase and showing a positive dynamic over the last years. And if we look at the health burden that we are talking about, just taking the standard metrics of the global disease burden, about a third by conservative measures are linked to aging. And that is if you put this in the dimensional therapeutic area, that's about 2.5 times bigger than oncology. Yeah, as an indication. So, and also, I'm going to be short here, but like the ecosystem around it is also growing. Alex has mentioned the Copenhagen conference, but many of the important meetings have more folks coming and more larger companies also getting interested. So, and there's, if you look at the some metrics here, also the 5-year average for trial initiation is way up by a quarter, and also according to our calculations, a 4 times increase in the 5-year average biotech funding in the field. So at the same time, it's a nascent area. If you now do a structural comparison of the field with let's say oncology and neurological disorders, you see that, let's say, the money invested per DALI is small. Yeah. So while emerging, it is also still a nascent area. We just need to recognize that. Yeah? And many things to be said about the inclusion criteria here for the drugs. We were quite generous. So this doesn't mean that there's necessarily breakthrough innovation around the corner, but this is what our assessment of the pipeline is at the moment. So now I'm going to be quite quick and mention these 7 areas. Yeah. So the article that we have written basically has then at the end also goes through these 7 in much detail, and then says at the end, how can all the different stakeholders, and we go I think through 8 or 10 or so stakeholder groups, contribute to help advance this agenda. Okay. So, and so therefore, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview. Number 1, field definition and perception. So for the purpose of this article, we took the definition here: the pursuit of extending health span and improving function by targeting the underlying processes of aging through biological and or medical intervention. So we are not advocating that this should be adapted for everybody, but we need the definition for the purpose of the paper. And the reason is that they are competing, but there is not really a clear terminology out there, which also means that there's always a danger that part of the area gets hijacked by those that maybe one wants to associate less with it, making less evidence-based claims and so forth. So there's really a need for a narrative that can be translated also for people who are currently still outside the tent and draw them in. And for that, an agreed upon terminology and positive evidence-based narrative is critical in our interviews, because we've talked to a lot of people in the field, but also outside the field that are still sitting on the fence, and asked them, what would you need to see to get more involved? So next point is around data. Really to further the fundamental understanding of aging, and what, of course, you would ideally like a global representative sample of the population that you can research. However, there's clear opportunities to already get ahead by having more access on the research side, and also more consistent use of novel tools on that data to, of course, to get ahead on disease understanding, right? So there's a lot of interesting pockets that are happening, but in terms of at-scale application, data access and so forth remains a big issue. And there are areas one can learn from, for example, Alzheimer's, where in the pre-competitive space, very interesting things have been happening on the data agenda. Number 3, biomarkers. There's strong momentum around this. Parallel efforts exist to get this a lot ahead, but of course, still a big agenda to do. And what is a lot of the biomarker discussion is a little bit more on the diagnostic side. You've all heard about aging clocks and so forth. What is really needed is progress on more surrogate endpoints that would help enable better health span trials. And that is tricky to do, but is really something that can majorly is important for, of course, regulatory approval, and can massively de-risk investment, and can lure those that are currently not investing in the field so much into. So what are the kind of signal-seeking trials to really accelerate towards this kind of discussion is an important question. We'll have also some comments on that at the end. If we look at the pipeline right now, it looks about like this. It is, again, a relatively generous inclusion criteria. So it doesn't mean that the endpoints are in any way aging specific. They're aging sensitive for sure. And typically the pipeline that we are looking here is somehow interfering with the biology of aging. But most of these compounds are, if you want, classical disease-oriented compounds. So I'm going to cut this very short because it's a fairly technical area. However, broadly speaking, in the area of translation and clinical development, of course, we have Alex here right now in the call with in silico medicine. But overall, the application at scale of advanced technological methods and R&D to this field there's more to be done in these 4 different dimensions here. And I'm not sure how many of you are in drug development per se, so I'm going to cut this short. And the article is there that goes more in detail on these topics. Number 5, the established regulatory pathways. We have currently no widely established regulatory reference cases, and there is a discussion on whether we can work with the existing pathways or whether we need new ones. In the end, based on our various, the assessment based on our assessment, I mean, both is possible, but the fact is that that this is an important unlock that's outstanding to reduce the time and costs of development and encourage further innovation and really get, and I'll talk about this in the second, get other investors into the field. Because the investment, this is point number 6, the structure of the investment is slightly different than in other areas, in the sense that the funding that's coming from high net worth individuals or venture capitals, many of those actually backed also by high net worth individuals, is relatively high. And that is an investment that, of course, has a high tolerance for risk, usually a little bit more limited scale, and what we have less proportionally in with some notable big exceptions, and that's also changing a little bit, is the type of capital, let's say blue chip life science capital. Yeah, that is a capital with high expertise in drug development, a lot of patience and scale. And that is kind of reflective of the area of where the area is at right now. But getting that capital in is also a huge accelerator of growth for a nascent but emerging therapeutic area. Then very important for also some of the things that, for example, Evelyne is driving, right? One needs to have the evidence-based practice and talent to really accelerate the space. Practitioners in the field that can, as clinicians or as part of research, is absolutely critical. The right incentives to actually engage in the kind of promotion and prevention activities, also from a system level. And interesting case example, there's Singapore, for example, where of course there's also a lot of healthy longevity medicine activity is important. To have the right support structures for this field. In the article, we're going through each of those 10 stakeholders to really spell out in more detail how they can contribute to the field. And what we would say is that not everybody necessarily needs to move forward now and get invested or so, but everybody should at least explore the strategic decision on how they are actively how they position themselves vis-a-vis the topic of discussion of today. Let me just maybe take off the slides here. So we have a moment for some, we have 5 minutes or so, I understand. We have a moment for questions also from the audience. And there's, I think, something in the chat already. I don't know what the right protocol is. I hand it over to Evelyne.
All right.
Hello,
Eva?
I'll allow myself to take over here a little bit and read some
Okay.
questions from the Q&A box. And I know that some of the participants are already raising their hands. Please put your questions in the Q&A box. That's the best way to proceed with the questions. But the one that is the most interesting here so far at the box is that some of the participants are still unclear on the health span definition. And the exact question reads, if somebody has a chronic disease in their youth, let's say that lasts about 7 years, is it that deducted from their overall health span? How is it the health span calculated?
Yeah. So I think there is no agreed upon definition of health span. Yeah. So of course, if you look at it statistically, something like to add the regression, you would have to exclude that. Yeah. From a public health perspective. Normally, what we are interested in for practical purpose with the health span expectation going forward, how many years in good health can you still have? That's a relevant metric for an individual, right? But like at the moment, it's there are of course attempts at this, but like there's no agreed upon way at the moment. And I think some outputs I'm aware of are also looking at this. I'm not sure in the last month I haven't followed this up, right? To try to establish this, right? But like in my mind, the public health one, yes, would have to exclude that. But the relevant one is for us on this call today, how many years can we still expect to be in good health versus how many years can we still expect to live? And the differential, of course, are ones where it's questionable how much we want to have these years to do it. Yeah, so I think that's really the way I frame that.
That's a great answer. Thank you. And there's another question that actually follows up on that. And that says, what indications do you think could proxy health span the most? Virality or some diseases?
What do you mean proxy health span the most?
Yes, so I think the participant is asking like if we were to have like a measurable index of health span, so would it be the when the loss of independence starts?
Yeah, so I would be much more ambitious. So I personally I don't think it's so interesting that we have only a negative measure. I think it's not good enough to just say the absence of disease or something like this, or that we still are dependent or so. I think it's much more interesting to have a granular measure where you can get, just to put it simple, points from 1 to 10, you know, and it's not just a cutoff yes, no, but a 1 to 10, and have a conversation about how high you can be and how high you can get. I think that's very important. And it's also meaningful. So it's a very functional perspective, you know, what are you able to do? Yeah. So there are some objective elements, whatever VO2 max or so, but there's also subjective ones, right? So, but I think health span needs to be about what you are able to do and needs to be a scale rather than a 0-1 notion to be meaningful, I think.
All right, so maybe I'll ask a question, and it's going to be kind of a dodgeball question. While people are asking, and I think Evelyne and Dominika are responding, so a lot of people are asking, like, which courses would you take and recommend certified for practicing longevity medicine? And I think that's you can find a bunch on Longevity Hub, CME accredited. But my question is, currently, many big pharmaceutical companies are looking into longevity already. So at the ARDD, you've seen Pfizer, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk both present GLP-1 drugs as proven longevity therapeutics, which was super impressive. So Eli Lilly really took the lead with Andrew Adams announcing. So in your opinion, what pharma companies are the most active in this area, with the exception of, let's say, Lilly and Novo? We all know them. But if you were to make a rating and also kind of talk about different strategies that they're taking, like what pharma companies are really getting into longevity?
So look, I mean, I think the presence at ARDD is a good indicator, right? I think the one thing, kind of tying it back to the previous conversation, that by and most, they think about aging as a platform across different therapeutic areas and not as aging as a therapeutic area. So that's number one, right? So that's I think very understandable, right? But it's just important to realize that that's what's currently happening, right? And then I think there's an interesting discussion on whether how to think about something that like GLP-1s or so as a longevity drug, right? Because what I always think about is that 92% or 93%, according to Tufts, of US citizens are metabolically unhealthy, yeah? So where's the difference between, you know, changing how we think about starting to introduce any kind of cardiovascular treatment earlier, you know, and what is healthy longevity? Both, it's good potentially in any event, right? But like, it's a semantic question, but it's an important one. How high is our ambition for a healthy longevity drug, really, right? So, I think that's kind of my response to your question. You know?
Thank you. So basically, if you are not at ARDD, you are not in longevity if you are in pharma, right? Or if you're not working with McKinsey Health Institute.
Was that a nice answer for you, Alex?
Thank you. So there are many other questions here.
Yes, maybe I can help if that's okay, because I think they are going a little bit into the cross section also of longevity medicine in clinical practice, which I think is so beautiful. It's very important to talk about education, and I think it's our all effort to educate strategic groups. So Longevity Education Hub is focusing on healthcare professionals and others, of course, students, science, and what Healthcare Institute, McKinsey Health Institute is doing is really education of policymakers, and then work with universities and with pharma and all the players is so crucial. That's why we're all together here. And I think this will lead us to what was asked in the question so many times. Is there a way to have a certified, credible way to actually learn about longevity medicine, be certified to practice it, and bring it really close, the final gap of bringing it into individual health and population health? But there are some questions, Dr. Hartenstein, to you. Firstly, what do you see, and especially in the screened report, which biomarkers do you think in the first priority, in the first stage, will have the best chance of being surrogate endpoints for a specific outcome in healthy longevity?
Look, I mean, I think this is a deeply scientific question. Yeah, so I think that is exactly what the work that needs to be done to really work on this for consortia and multiple stakeholders to do this well, right? And kind of really identify a smaller set of potential trials that you can do on this. That's the work that needs to be done, right? So I'm not, therefore, what I'm going to be saying, you know, is really just only to kind of give us an example. It's not at all a recommendation or an estimate in any shape or form, yeah? But so just for example, the resilience to flu, right? Flu is something that a lot of elderly actually are affected by it. It happens every year. We have flu vaccines and so forth, right? And there's high mortality rate, right? So I would like to see that. I'm not recommending that that's where the research should be going, you know, but you would expect to see that the resilience to flu, if you have a working healthy longevity drug, you know, would be materially improving, right? Because that it's associated with the biological age of your body. So those are the kind of things that have clinical relevance, you know, I can be conceptualized as somehow being related to the biology of aging, right? So that's the kind of thing that one I think, should be looking for, right?
And it's a very powerful message, because it's important that not only us from the scientific or medical field think this way, but really to have endpoints that would be acceptable for the public health, for the policymakers, for those stakeholders who are actually also governing us, funding us, that this message will arrive there. So it's very beautiful to hear that from you, and I think this is a very powerful message also as a McKinsey Health Institute. I wonder also in your screen, in your reports, as you are looking at the public health dimension, right? Did you see that there will be some population groups that will be a little bit more difficult to target? Here, an attendee mentioned a group of athletic people, athletes. is this a burden? Is this a problem to look specifically on them, since yes, they will have a little bit of a different set of what we are looking at?
So first of all, I thought that we are going until the top of the hour. I can go a little bit longer, but I need to start moving a little bit. I hope that's okay, but then we can continue the conversation. So athletes, because they are already doing quite well, or because they have a good metabolic health, or what's kind of, not quite sure I understand the question. Overall, I'm particularly interested in the populations like, let's say, Japan, where we already have, let's say, 100,000 centenarians, you know. I'd like to, that would be an interesting population to really show what can already do better, because for all sorts of exosome, maybe genetic reasons, right, there's a population that's doing quite well in terms of aging. So, where there are 100,000 people today alive born in or before 1925. So one would like to see a powerful intervention to work there, right? And overall, in terms of population, in terms of the practice of healthy longevity medicine today, I think one concern is the inequity of it, right? That the people that are kind of going this direction tend to be people that are already quite affluent in terms of, let's say, those kinds of drivers of health are already doing better than many others. Yeah, and so therefore, that healthy longevity medicine, while I think there have been some interesting papers on doing this in public health settings, including I think some on this call, but it's a problematic. It's a particular cohort that only is benefiting from the latest innovation on this. Yeah?
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sorry, went over time, and we know that it is invaluable. We are super, super grateful. Thank you so much for all you are doing. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us. The webinar will be recorded and shared on YouTube, as we always do. And we are hoping to see everybody who is attending here, including Dr. Hartenstein, next year at ARDD.
Thank you, Lars. And thanks everybody for dialing in. Let's follow McKinsey Health Institute on LinkedIn, and let's work together to make people live longer and more productive lives, because productive lifespan is probably the most important. Without longevity research, we won't be able to step on the path of continuous improvement. And I'm very happy that McKinsey is taking a lead at industry analysis and ensuring that this industry is properly shaped. Thank you so much, and let's work harder.
Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned. In November, we will have another webinar coming in with our speaker from King's College of London, Dr. Chiara Herzog. Stay tuned. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.